Witam serdecznie na
Welcome back to our last part of our Congress this year, of our Cross-Border Cooperation Congress. We have Ms. Natalia Kurkowska with us. And each panel of our meeting, prepared and discussed with members of the board of our Congress, and you're a member of this board, and among the one of the longest supporters of our Congress, and you have been lately rewarded by the mayor of our city, and particularly in the field of role and place of women in trans or cross-border cooperation in city spaces. So we wanted to use this opportunity and to use this report prepared with help of with a report concerning the role of women in politics, and the partner of this report is Foundation Heinrich Böll Foundation. I'm so happy to be here with you, and we have members of panel, which I'm happy to welcome. A moderator will be Małgorzata Kopka-Piątek, head of the European program at the Institute of Public Affairs in Warsaw. Iwona Reichardt is a speaker who is deputy editor-in-chief in the New Eastern Europe magazine, and she deals mostly with Eastern policy. And that's basically they are responsible for the report that has been mentioned, the Heinrich Böll Foundation report, and Katarzyna Pełczyńska-Nałęcz, who is head of the 2050 Strategy Institute, and she is former ambassador of Poland in the Russian Federation. So partners, FemGlobal and the Heinrich Böll Foundation are partners, strategic partners of this panel, dealing with foreign policy affairs. So we pass voice to head of the European program at the Institute of Public Affairs in Warsaw, Ms. Małgorzata Kopka-Piątek. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Let's start with, we decided to my role is more of a moderator, but I agree that we will change a little the structuration of this meeting, but we will both present the report. Okay, so let me welcome all participants of the panel here in Lublin and online. I also, of course, I'm so happy for Natalia Kurkowska and her reward, and I'm happy to see and welcome so many people, because it shows the interest of your interest in the topic of our story. The panelists have just been presented, so let's perhaps start, because we have 45 minutes and we have a relatively broad topic to discuss. So we'll try to be as concise as possible, and to then to discuss and then to present the report, discuss the story, and maybe also even answer questions. So we'll leave some 5 minutes in the final part of our meeting if you feel like asking a question concerning either the report or the general topic of our story, of our conversation today. So let's handle this main topic of role of women. Why do we actually talk about role of women in politics and foreign politics? Does it really matter? Does it really, let's say that, does it differ from what men do, what males do? But I can't remember any panel on the role of males in foreign policy. So basically, that's a question that I would like to ask to my panelists. We talk about feminist foreign policy, a female perspective on policy. So why do we talk about role of women? Why do we have panels on the role of women? And how do you interpret this situation? Okay, so what's going on in these topics? So maybe I'll ask Ms. Małgorzata Kopka-Piątek for that. Okay, thank you very much. Let me thank you for the invitation, and I also join in this voice of saying of congratulating Ms. Kurkowska and on her award. And I'm happy that we may say our cooperation is something like traditional. So as far as the role of women, basically, I'm happy that we do talk about it. The time has come for us to talk about it, because I can see no reason why foreign policy is somehow where women should not be present, where women should not be active. We can see a lot of changes, a lot of transformation in social roles and social participation. So we can see that we have more and more women in various areas of human and political activity. So we can, and then or at least we can see that there is a missing participation of women, and then we think about how to make up for this lack of presence, of female presence. So the fact that females won the voting rights. Well, that was obvious that evolutionary, I mean, in terms of evolution, women will become more active in social life and politics, and they will not only vote, but they would also like to be voted for. And they would like to have influence on what policy is, how it is implemented, and who's addressee of this policy. So we can see changes in business, we can see changes in uniform services, in sciences and research. In those all fields of generally understood social political life. So all these phenomena have some common denominator, that to increase the representation of female representatives in various milieus and environments. Sometimes it's maybe a simple, maybe trivial thing to say, but, you know, it's actually a simple matter of fact that we have a constitutionally protected right to be represented socially. And we can expect it. But it's true at the same time that we can expect things, but it changes nothing. I mean, waiting in expectation leads nowhere. And we perhaps need to be more active, and perhaps there is this kind of moment and political momentum, social and political momentum, to become active and accountable for a wider spectrum of roles, social roles. Let me maybe use an illustration with an example from beyond the politics. Why it is worthwhile to introduce the general perspective for having women representation because of their expectations and because of their experiences, life experiences. So I'm going to use an example of a family life, of a story, of a conversation with a man of let's say an adult man. Can't remember how we started, but at one moment we started talking about linen, about bed linen, and this person, I mean, just a relative of mine said, when I started making my bed, I started realize that I need to click here or zip here, and I like those zipped linen forms because it's easiest to handle. So I'm using this example because for a number of years this man used linen, wooden maybe he observed, he saw the color, maybe he had some favorite color, maybe he even realized the fabric or certain preferences for the texture of the, but he never really cared how you work with that, how you zip it, how you click it, how you just use it, and how you change it and so on. So I'm using this simple example, almost trivial example, to show that different experiences, different professions, different social and professional roles that we play, we change the way we perceive reality around us. And because of politics is strongly related to what is there around us and between us, and how we would like it to look like in the future, it's important to have a convergence of all those experiences and expectations or needs. Because without that, the political solutions will address the public needs, truly public needs, wide needs, and not only some kind of elites, some kind of margin, like those politicians who know how everybody should make their bed. And the choice is only about the color, not so much about the whole technicalities of how certain elements are prepared. Okay, so that's my introduction. Thank you. Thank you very much for this voice, and I would like to ask Katarzyna Pełczyńska-Nałęcz with this metaphor of making your bed. So, is there any difference how this bed of foreign policies is made by males and females? Are there differences between it? And what's your reaction to this title of the role of women in foreign policies? Is it the same? Is it on a par? Or how do you interpret that? Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this event and for yet another time. So basically, I made a kind of exercise before I entered here, and I went to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can do it. You can also do it hands-on training, okay? If you can do it, just open the website, right? So the first event, men. The second event, men. Third event, men. Maybe the fifth event mentions a woman, but only she gives a document. She submits a document to be signed by a man. Ministers, all of them are men. So, seeing that, I don't want to generalize over that. Obviously, there are female directors of departments, but this exercise shows a lot. It really shows where we are. And asking about the role of women is a legitimate question. Because this picture, this visualization on the ministerial website would say that today women have no role in foreign policy at all. So in a way, it's more than obvious that this disproportion, this inequality, should be get rid of in Poland. And you meant this argumentation on the level of human rights, like, okay, half of the society is women, so why are we underrepresented? Also on the level of international policy and talking with foreign countries, foreign states, we should. There's also this aspect of perspectives, that women have different life experiences, so they have a different perspective on international relations. And let me add furthermore, or two more arguments. One thing is the methodology, and there is research to cover that. The research shows that, obviously, this is statistical research, females show tendency to think in a different way about relations or relationships. So, building international relations, there is less tendency towards confrontation, more towards compromise, dialogue, and seeking common good, more towards win-win solutions rather than win-lose. And this is strongly correlated, but I don't want to say that this more, let's say, more female way of looking is not an asset. Sometimes it's a better solution, but the point is to put some balance between these two. And the other argument, maybe truly vital for me, presence of women in foreign policy, and I'm not talking about Poland, but just globally, makes it that foreign relations, international relations, can discuss issues that without women will not be handled, will not be discussed. So basically about the status of women in countries globally, we see that in a majority of countries we have a problem of a pre-modern, like tribe-like approach to women's rights. It's far from Polish experience, but the relation between males and females, full domination of males, impossibility to inherit. And bringing that issue, the females' rights into international relations, makes it that the situation changes slightly in those, let's say, in the countries. Of course, local government is crucial in these changes. However, international relations, international community does its say, has its say. So why, apart from all those arguments like human rights, ethical and so on, why is it that it's worthwhile to change the situation? Well, research can serve as justification for the changes, for those changes towards greater presence of women. In research, we can see certain questions concerning correlation between females' rights and security and safety, and the feeling of security and safety among the citizens. And the research shows the correlation is really great, because the reduction of oppressive approach to women, if it changes, if this oppression dwindles, certainly that will have a positive influence. And the reduction of aggressive actions and behaviors, more striving for peace. I could show you exactly, where particular countries have these problems, but maybe I'll be back to mention that in my next say. Okay, thank you very much. You actually introduced this question number 2 I would like to talk about. These are elements of a concept that Sweden is pursuing since, or has been pursuing since 2015. Canada, France, Luxembourg, and Mexico is considering implementing, and this is this feminist foreign policy. This concept is also discussed by the European Union milieux. The interest in Poland is rather low, and the report that has been mentioned, Will Women Save the World and Feminist Foreign Policy? And I would like us to talk a little about this report, and I would like to ask Małgorzata as a co-writer of the report, and then Katarzyna as a experienced politician. And my question is, what would need to happen in Poland? What criteria would have to be met that our foreign policy becomes more feminized? And at least there is a debate about this potential change in policy. So, because Katarzyna started about these elements of feminist policy, I'll ask her I'll ask Katarzyna to start, and then Małgorzata will follow. And just a couple of words about the report later on. Okay, I'm a little bit surprised. I'm a little bit, but okay, fine. So I think the key issue in what we are saying, what we are talking about, there are obviously promotion actions, publicity, that's, marketing kind of stuff. It goes without saying. You have to do it. You have to make people realize step by step it does influence the status quo. But I would risk a claim that feminist foreign policy, this is my point of view, is not a policy that must be pursued by females. It's a policy that takes into account female perspective, taking into account methodology, procedures, and the agenda, the content of this policy. The things that are on the table when discussing international relations. And when you approach the matter from that side, and the issue of, the tension between what females do, what men do, who must dominate over, who dominates over whom, is no longer a problem. Because what we care about is that this perspective, these topics, are important to all, or to both. You cannot either use you cannot only have men discuss development policy for education of girls. Okay, you cannot have men who would promote this, because that would be that wouldn't be a reliable approach to the matter. But these issues can be handled by males when there is equal representation of females defining what foreign policy is. If, again, research showing that when females are not under oppression, they are better educators, there is a greater chance for their children to have better welfare, better education. Where females are not under oppression, there is lower level of polygamy and unfavorable social phenomena. So there is more regularity as for family life and reduced degree of aggressiveness, police interventions, or any kind of organizations, social organizations which are negative, which are aggressive, and usually, because they usually recruit males who are in a way frustrated. So showing that it's not just a question of parity, it's not just a question of domination, and now you have to redominate or maybe dominate over men, because this is not the whole story. And the key issue here is the oppression of females, which is really strong, like Afghanistan or in African countries, leads to war, famine, and migration, like migration towards the European Union, the consequences of which are absolutely negative to our countries as well. And the method is slow change to reduce the tension, reduce the oppression. And I think this is a globally important matter, must take place, must go on with the hands of women, but also with the presence, active presence of men. So I think this is the conviction that it's worthwhile.
In our report, we do convince, we would always convince that this is a concept that will benefit all, not only women, also men, everyone. If I may ask Małgorzata, we have about 20 minutes left. Can we please hear your take about this report? Yeah, I will start with a little commercial. This is the report. Can women save the world? Feminist foreign policy. by me and Iwona Reichardt. I'd like to thank, on behalf of Heinrich Böll Foundation, they have made it possible to make it written, make it published. So this is the question, whether this is women or not women in foreign policy. This is the question that everybody asks us, and we ask during interviews. And many people discouraged us from using the word feminist or feminism in the title because it may simply scare some people away, and it will kind of channel or narrow the discussion to feminist movements only, instead of talking about women. So this feminism, in the name of the concept, means something inclusive, something that provides for groups previously marginalized. Of course, there are relatively many women represented, but given that this is half of mankind, it's still not enough. So feminism is there to take care of women, to give more voice to women, but also to groups that for different social, historical reasons and other reasons have limited access to exercising power. So it's not about women giving way to women, men giving way to women, elbowing their way through this world. It's not necessarily the point. But of course, this world is dominated by men. But it's not about pushing your way forward to get to positions or functions. Of course, functions are needed to have influence, certain decisions. Even if a woman or women get organized through some bottom-up initiative, like in our association, and of course we have to get together, we have to have and we need to make our voice heard, but certain forms of organization, certain forms of action have certain limitations, and direct participation in politics, in political life, is not an aim in itself. Although, of course, I can't rule out that some women do have such ambitions, just like men do. But this is just a means to an end, and in these relations should see a departure from a state-centric approach towards citizen-centric approach. So feminist foreign policy aims to take care of relations between male and female citizens of different countries rather than between states or state interests. So this is guided by the interest of persons. So Sweden and this new opening of Sweden in foreign policy, they were fully aware that the group that needs particular support in access to law, resources, education, ownership, these are women and girls. So what follows, they decided to support equal treatment, equal approach, and to follow up on this Swedish approach, we not only say about strengthening women, but also we strengthen and we stress equality by inclusion, religious groups, ethnic groups, people with disabilities. So all citizens who make a specific society, but previously were not seen or heard in international relations. Even if they play a role, this role is is marginal, it's secondary. So now they will work more subjectively. How to make it possible in Poland? That's the question. That's an interesting subject to explore, and it may take a couple of hours perhaps to discuss it. But this is partly in the report. This report is available on our website in the PDF format. It's also printed, so you can have a look at this. Let me also refer to Katarzyna's information about research, because this is something that really works with people when they hear that something has been scientifically proven. So we should have a look at what business discovered some time ago. Mixed teams, and I don't only mean male-female, but also ethnically, culturally, mixed teams are more creative, are more effective, are more beneficial for business. Similar trends are visible in science. There are more multinational teams, sectoral teams going across sectors, groups. Why this feminist, or I should say inclusive approach relevant in foreign policy? Again, we have research showing that peaceful talks or peaceful agreements, peace agreements are usually more durable if women are part of this. So the more group is there to find a solution, find peace among different parties, the more durable this solution is. The bigger group takes part or also takes care of their own needs to be respected in such an agreement, the better. And the more people, the bigger group is involved, the more durable and lasting peace or any solution is. So if we look at what happened in Afghanistan, we can see that the negotiation of Americans' exit from Afghanistan, negotiated with Talibans only, show that as a result, of course, the Afghan society is the first victim, but women are victims in particular. They are denied the right to study, to take certain jobs, and there is widespread violence, aggression against women. This is the most striking example that we have seen recently. And we see that it doesn't work, it shouldn't work this way. Yeah, we wrote this book in 2020, so the pandemic was the main focus and its impact on women and on international relations. And Joe Biden was running for elections together with Kamala Harris, and we wrote that foreign policy, feminist policy, is more people-oriented than state-oriented. And we said that it was a future or prospective proposal for Poland, that this is not something we can implement today. We know the foreign policy now being implemented by the Polish government. That's why we think about all these aspects, all these issues from the future perspective. So let's talk about women in state position, in administration, because foreign policy is not only Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So what is your dream foreign policy for Poland? Małgorzata, what about you? Thank you. My dream of foreign policy is for men and women and all groups previously marginalized to have the same, have equal opportunity to impact decisions so that women are not just something extra, something secondary, but they should really have the power to make the difference in politics. I dream of politics that is rested on collaboration, that prioritizes people's interest, neighbors' interest, and also one that prioritizes the interest of the planet. This is particularly relevant today. Instead of showing how strong, how powerful we are, we should seek reconciliation. Instead of war, conventional or personal, we should go for peace. So this is what I think. But of course, nobody knows what we should expect in the future. But if we keep saying about this, I hope everybody will benefit, and that the way we go today is not the way we should go, and there is no public consent to this. So whether we take ministries or programming boards in different institutions dealing with politics, this should be less masculine, and statistics show that. We know where some change or progress is, but we know where there is a lot to be done, or even things regress. So this is really hard work, but we should support women who have been successful in this unfavorable world, unfavorable conditions, and through their positions of power, they are not only feel fulfilled in terms of their ambitions, but they also break new ground for other women. So these success stories, these cases should be highlighted and should lead to the change of attitude in terms of the traditional division of roles, or who is fit for what in public life. So this will certainly lead to politics that has a greater representation of women, so the success will be more durable, more stable. Katarzyna, what is your dream foreign policy? I do share some of Małgorzatas dreams, but the most important dream I have about foreign policy, or broadly speaking, international relations, is to establish such relations that will take us, mankind, to tackle problems that have accumulated, and they have not been caused by COVID, that remain unresolved. They are just a time bomb that should be neutralized. This is climate change, growing inequality inside and between countries, and certain disintegration of the global order. This is going into pieces before our very eyes. So there is not the strength of law, but the power that prevails, and we would like to see policy that will handle such problems. Certainly, greater representation of women is not the only tool, the only trick that will solve all problems, but certainly this should be conducive to building better relations. On the other hand, I'm not saying that every single woman should follow the same line of thinking about what future politics should be like. So we should more speak about certain cause in terms of what politics we would like to have, that it cannot go without women, but we should be also aware that a woman in a certain position doesn't need to change anything. Maybe even things can go worse. Because we know there are women already in different positions at the administration, and it doesn't change anything. So it's not only about getting more women. This is an added value, but not always. We should be frank about it. We need a different agenda. We need a different logic in foreign policy, which is not based on blaming everyone or fault-finding or polarizing groups and nations, but we should seek an agenda that builds bridges, and this is much more difficult. And finally, and realistically speaking, even the most ingenious diplomacy full of great people dealing with international relations, the people of both sexes, this is a derivative of what is happening in the country, in this nation. That's why every country should start working from inside, changing from inside, so that the best of its people should go into politics with a different understanding of foreign relations, and this is what I would like to see in Europe in the first place. Anyway, we are not doing that bad. I mean, better than elsewhere in the world. Well, I also fully subscribe to these dreams. They are also my dreams. So, before we close, we also have a question from the audience, and this is a question about the percentage or the share of women in diplomacy. We have some data. It was published in the report, so maybe, Małgorzata, maybe you can very quickly identify where this is and just give the answer. Yeah, well, 100% of top executives in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are men, and when drawing up this report, which is the second half of 2020, out of 93 diplomatic missions in the world, we had 21 women in leading positions. At the level of department leadership, out of 29 positions, 18 were taken by men, which is 62%, only 5 women, and 5 vacancies. If we look at deputies or assistants, 32 men and 24 women, which is almost equal, 48% of women. This is the pieces of data we were able to find, but again, this is the data from a year ago. So we can imagine there might have been some changes on the way, because there was a new law enacted at some point. This may or might have some impact on this share of sexes in diplomacy. Yes, but the leadership, executives are fully men or fully masculine, and it hasn't changed. Well, we are about to close, and our dream, perhaps one of the most important dreams, is to meet in person next year in Poland. We are not closing this discussion, we keep it open. International politics will supply more and more questions or challenges, including concerning women. So I do hope to meet you again next year. I want to thank very much to our friends, organizers of this event, and again, hope to see you next year in the flesh in Lublin. Of course, you are all welcome to join us next year, and so you heard that every fifth Polish ambassador in the world is a woman, so 25% of top-level diplomats. But as we heard, it's not the only thing, it's not the most important thing to have an equal number of genders in diplomacy. The more important thing is to change the agenda, to revise foreign policy or politics globally, especially with the main focus on places where women are discriminated against. So this has been a great honor for me, together with Katarzyna Pełczyńska-Nałęcz, to have this meeting, and it was a great honor for me also with Katarzyna to share a desk at the Ministry of Education some years ago. And I want to thank Małgorzata for hosting this conversation, and see you next year in Lublin.